This is Dr. Clarence B. Jones, and this is an audio early release, press release, about the writing of my autobiographical memoirs. Against today's landscape of unprecedented biomedical and communications technology, weapons of mass destruction, political terrorism, and America's election of its first African-American president, a unique book of autobiographical memoirs is being written. Subject to the success of a planned crowdfunding effort, I, Dr. Clarence B. Jones, former political advisor and personal lawyer for Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I'm writing my memoirs, a pencil and a dollar bill. They are scheduled for completion on or before September 1st, 2015. I am initiating the crowdfunding now, and I intend to keep it open through February, Black History Month. The title of my memoir comes from an early childhood experience. I am the only child of live-in household domestic servants. And when I was about 10 years old, I was sitting on a chair in the kitchen where my mother, as I said, a domestic servant, she was doing dishes. Didn't have any dishwasher at those years. So I got up and took a dish towel and started to help my mother to dry the dishes. She quickly took the towel from my hands and told me to go back and sit down on the chair I had been sitting. And she said to me, "No son of mine is going to work in some white folks' kitchen. The only thing I ever want to see in your hands is a pencil and a dollar bill." So the narrative arc of my autobiographical memoirs, it describes my life journey over 8 decades, from a Catholic boarding school for indigent colored boys and Indians, operated by Irish nuns, to a graduation from an elite Ivy League college. After having been in public high school, a Juilliard-trained musician, classical clarinetist. I talk about the painful early death of my mother, my discharge as a national security risk from the United States Army after having served more than 21 years of honorable service, my subsequent receipt of an honorable discharge, my graduation from law school, my meeting of Dr. King in February 1960, and my work with him as his personal lawyer, political advisor, and draft speechwriter, up until the day, April 4th, 1968, of his assassination. I also talk about my work during the Civil Rights Movement, especially those times and efforts spent in building and sustaining the coalition of unprecedented support which we enjoyed from the Jewish community. And I mentioned, of course, somewhat reluctantly, but it is a fact, that I was the first Negro to become an allied member of the New York Stock Exchange as a result of becoming a partner in a member banking firm of the New York Stock Exchange. I speak about some of my successful entrepreneurial ventures, some that were less than successful. I write about the tragic death in 1977 of the mother of 4 of my adult children, my ultimately successful struggle against alcohol addiction, and the consequential adverse impact of this and other events on my legal and business career. I speak about my travel. I write about my travel overseas and other events as being an advisor, a consultant to governments such as the East African government of Zambia, investment banking consultant for the Ministry of Finance of Jamaica, Bahamas, Dominican Republic, and of course playing an organizational role in putting together the 1974 Rumble in the Jungle, the heavyweight championship fight between Muhammad Ali and George Foreman. And my travel, which then was technically unauthorized, to Angola with the former Prime Minister of Portugal in 1976. And my observations of being in Angola and my limited information I got about the presence of Cuban soldiers who were there that successfully enabled that country to have an election without interference from the CIA or from the South African security forces. I speak about September 1971, when then Governor Nelson Rockefeller asked me to be one of the people to try to mediate a peaceful solution of the Attica prison rebellion. My efforts, along with then associate editor of the New York Times, Tom Wicker, and former Congressman Herman Badillo from the Bronx, and others who served as so-called observers, we were unsuccessful. And as a result, 42 people were killed when Governor Nelson Rockefeller ordered armed New York State troopers to retake the prison. I speak about my health challenges. I suffered a mini stroke. I've had an ongoing battle with prostate cancer. And I speak about one of the more enjoyable experiences I had in 2012 when Georgetown University selected me to be the recipient of the Legacy of the Dream Award, which was awarded to me in the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. And I gave about an 8-minute acceptance speech in receiving the award, and I dedicated the award, in fact, to Martin Luther King Jr. and to a deceased colleague of mine who worked with me with Dr. King, a lawyer, Stanley David Levison from New York. And I spoke about also dedicating it to all of those persons in the civil rights movement who were no longer with us. I called them wintertime soldiers, unknown persons that were not generally known to the public, but I knew them. And I could hear their voices and see I've carried the sound of their voices and the picture of their faces in me over all these years. And it was during that speech and presentation of the award that the President and the First Lady were there, and he heard my acceptance speech. And a week later, he wrote me a very touching note saying how moved he was by what I said about wintertime soldiers in the presentation in the receipt of my award, and invited me to come and be photographed with him in the Oval Office next to the bust of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that he keeps in his office. These things I write about, and I write about my segue of very proudly serving for the past 3 years or more as a diversity visiting professor at the University of San Francisco, in which I teach 2 courses, one in the undergraduate College of Arts and Sciences, 15-week, almost 2-hour course per week from slavery to Obama. And then in the Graduate School of Urban Politics, I teach another course on the art of advocacy speechwriting. Good to see you. These things I do concurrent with also serving as a scholar in residence at the Martin Luther King Jr. Research and Education Center at Stanford University here in Palo Alto, not too far from my home. I hope that those of you who have heard my voice and have a chance to speak to my assistant, Mr. Wolf Price, who has done some extraordinary work in founding and funding a school for girls in Nepal. And now, while he's here in the United States, he's agreed to take a leadership role in the Kickstarter crowdfunding effort that we are undertaking to provide the funding for me to literally just take off the next 8 months and concentrate on nothing but completing my memoirs on a fast-track basis. So I hope if you have a chance to speak or see Mr. Price that you will give him your time and attention and the same courtesy that I assume you would give to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was awesome. I think that's perfect. That's really good.